Welcome everyone for the Bhagavatam class. By the grace of Srila Prabhupada, we have access to the ripened fruit of the Vedas. And so I was reading yesterday and today a little bit the verse from the 10th Canto, 14th chapter, which are Brahma's prayers, and verse 2. They are very beautiful prayers which reveal the way in which we attain Krishna's mercy. Brahma is our Guru. And it is out of his grace that we obtain the mercy of Sri Radha. When Krishna played his flute and the Gayatri came out of his mouth, it is not an ordinary sound that Brahma perceived, but the feelings that Krishna has for Radhika. And it came out in the form of the Brahma Gayatri. That is why for us this meditation is special, because we receive the wisdom from a very special lineage. So, in this Brahma Gayatri, there are all the feelings that are contained in Krishna's flute. In reality, we're in contact of something so elevated, but our consciousness is so low that we cannot understand anything. That is why we need a special mercy. And that is why Srila Prabhupada was sent. Because Krishna, who is the friend of all living entities, he knows the consciousness of living entities in the age of Kali. The consciousness is so low. And as Mahaprabhu, he comes to give a feeling that is so elevated. How is that possible? Because any incompatible thing can become compatible by the grace of the Lord. The most elevated thing in the lowest age. And we need a channel. For us it is Prabhupada. The other day, an Indian lady, she was asking, who is the most merciful? Krishna, Radharani, Mahaprabhu, or Prabhupada? And it is a question that is very difficult to answer, because nobody can be more merciful than Srimati Radharani, because she is the personification of the mercy of Krishna. The proof is that Krishna is justice. He is justice. He is neither partial nor impartial. He reciprocates with love. But we don't have love. We don't have feelings. How? What will we obtain if there is justice? We cannot obtain anything. So, when Krishna absorbs himself in the position of Radharani, then he distributes himself. He becomes blinded. Justice disappears. Can you believe it? No more justice anymore. Just mercy. And he cries, and he embraces all living entities. And when you are embraced by the mercy of Mahaprabhu, then you obtain prem. But Mahaprabhu preached up to India, and Lochandas Thakur, in the Chaitanya Mangal, he explained those who leave running, that escape my mercy, escape, that flee. I don't want to be saved. Can you believe it? This is the Asuric mentality. I do not want to be saved. I am good as a demon in my situation. I do not want to change. And what did Mahaprabhu say? I will send my Senapati Bhakta. The power will be given to him, and he will distribute my mercy everywhere. It is extremely beautiful, so beautiful. That is why we love Prabhupada. It is a great love. Nobody for us is his equal. That is why, although we can take initiation, because it is the principle of the Guru Parampara, he is our Guru. Nobody can replace him. The one who thinks to be at the same level, we call that a madman. Someone who is illusioned by the material energy, Mayadakshina Prakriti. This energy can make us believe anything. The proof is the Mayavadis, they think that they have become God. But what is in regard to us, if we are sincere and we take shelter in the mercy of Nitai, then we'll be protected. And we will always be a servant. And then we will see the beauty of things. As soon as we appropriate ourselves something that Krishna gives us, then we cannot see the beauty in people. So that is why the strength that we receive to speak, the strength that we receive to listen, to serve, it is Prabhupada. We must meditate on Prabhupada always and establish a sincere relationship. So, we will read a verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. If you have a phone for the verse, 10:14:2. I'm sorry. Translation. My dear Lord, You have manifested this beautiful form before me out of your infinite causeless mercy. But I cannot understand its transcendental beauty. The glory of this magnificent transcendental form that you have manifested here in Braj, he is realized solely by your pure devotees. This form that is yours is certainly not a produce of matter. It is the incarnation itself of eternity, of knowledge and bliss, which can only be understood by you. Purport. Although Brahma, out of the mercy of the Lord, can have an immeasurable power, that he is the first manifested being, whether he is the personification of the Vedas, he admits that he cannot estimate the greatness of Krishna. Actually, although Brahma is the sub-creator of the universe, he stays a limited being, whereas Krishna is limitless. The innumerable universes emanate from him, and he is the source of an innumerable Brahmas. Brahma then approached Krishna with a lot of humility, repenting of the offense, the great offense of offending him.
Om Magana Kimilandasyo Ganam Shalam Shalakayo Shakshurumiritam Jena Taisme Shigulave Namaham Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Ghoravani Pracharine Nirveshe Shasunyavadi Prachachadi Shatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyacha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We spoke for the last couple of days about this feeling of Brahma. And we explained that Brahma, he knows Narayan. He already had the darshan of Narayan, since when he performed his austerities, the Lord introduced him in his abode so that he can have his darshan and see his wonderful kingdom. And we explained that after Brahma received the power to create, and through this vision, and because he is passion personified, he manifested a perverted reality, which we call the material world. So, when Brahma realized a little bit of the expanse of the glories of Krishna, since when the Lord manifested as all these millions of personalities as devotees and cowherd boys, and he took the incarnation of all the Garbhodakshaya Vishnus of all the universes. He saw Brahmas, inconceivable Brahmas, certain have hundreds of heads, thousands and hundreds of thousands of heads. The more the universe is big, the more the Brahmas have heads. That is why our Brahma is the smallest universe. He has only 4 heads. So he was able to see a little bit the expanse of the glories of the Lord. And so, when he realized that Krishna was the origin of his Lord, and that all these forms entered within himself, and that Krishna was in this sweet mood of looking for his cows and friends that were lost, then at that moment, the inconceivable vision of Brahma, because he was lost in this opulence which manifested from Krishna. And when he saw this sweetness, he became completely paralyzed and devoid of all moods of thinking to be the creator. At that moment, he was ready to receive a special mercy. Otherwise, it is not possible. If something is staying where we think, I am the master, I am the origin, I possess, we cannot approach the Lord. It is impossible. Impossible. Krishna himself in the Gita, he says, those who have these desires for opulence, for glory, never they can understand me. Impossible. But due to this mercy, then through his vision of Lord Narayan, because Brahma, this was his meditation, meditating on Lord Narayan. He didn't have the possibility to understand through his feelings Krishna, because they are simply Brajbasis. It is simply the Brajbasis that can see Krishna, his sweetness, his qualities. For example, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Lord Vishnu, from each of his senses, he can listen with the hand, he can eat with the feet. But Krishna, it's different. It's very interesting. It's a little different from the Brahma Samhita. It is that actually when the Lord is in his sweetness, he acts like a human being and he loses this kind of powers connected to opulence. Because when Brahma recited the prayers, it was in a vision of in between a vision of opulence and sweetness. So he could, because since Krishna is the incarnation of all these incarnations, he is the source of all the incarnations, automatically he saw through the opulence. That is why he had this realization. But Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that when Krishna is situated in his sweetness, he doesn't do that actually. It is interesting. That is why Braj is the sweetest abode. In Vaikuntha, the Lord has shoes. In Braj, he walks barefoot. And so, Brahma, he expresses in the previous verse, my Lord, he wears alligator earrings. And it is wonderful because he sees through this vision. But you have earrings that are like berries. Because Krishna is decorated by his friends through flowers, fruits. And he says, but you're even more beautiful. It is so much wonderful. Still, it is just like fruits. But this beauty surpasses my enchantment.
ta forme d'enfant
Your
est
form of a
si
child
douce.
is so sweet.
Parce qu'en fait,
Because actually,
sa réalisation, elle
his
était
realization was surpassed,
complètement dépassée.
completely
Il voit quelque
surpassed.
chose qu'il ne
He
peut
sees
pas
something that he cannot
comprendre, qui
understand,
dépasse même
that surpasses
le
even
Seigneur Narayana.
Lord Narayan.
Il fait une
He
description.
makes a description.
Ta main
Your hand,
qui
which
porte un morceau
which
en fait,
bears,
de nourriture,
which keeps like a morsel of food,
ta flûte,
your flute,
ton bâton de main,
your walking stick, your peacock feather,
tellement.
everything is so much extraordinary.
En fait,
Actually,
on peut comprendre
we can
ce
understand
Krishna,
because
il porte
Krishna,
cette plume de
he wears a peacock feather
parce que
because it represents
Radharani.
Radharani.
Donc lorsque
So when
Krishna, il voit,
when Brahma he sees this peacock feather
et il voit
and he
ce
sees
Seigneur qui est
this
dominé
Lord
par l'amour.
which is dominated by love,
Alors que Narayan
whereas Narayan he cannot
être, il
be,
est certes dominé, mais il
is
reste
of course
toujours Seigneur.
dominated, but he still stays the Lord.
Alors que
Whereas
s'il est dans sa forme de
when
douceur,
he is in this form of sweetness,
alors il
then
devient complètement
he becomes completely
C'est
captivated.
pour ça qu'il est
And that is why he has a special beauty,
parce qu'il boit
because he drinks
dans toutes choses
in all things
la miséricorde.
the mercy of Radhika.
Lorsque Krishna entre dans Vrindavan,
When Krishna enters in Vrindavan,
cette forêt merveilleuse,
this wonderful forest,
tout
everything
devient une manifestation
becomes a manifestation
de Radharani.
of Radharani.
Les arbres ont
The trees have the form
ces différentes postures,
of her different postures,
parties
of different parts of Radhika's body manifest in the
de
form
fruits,
of fruits,
de fleurs.
of flowers.
Le vent transporte
The wind
différents
transports different fragrances
parfums, et aussi différents
and also different drops of water from the lakes around that are imbued with a sweetness, with her sweetness. The deers,
lorsqu'elles
when
marchent,
they walk,
font retentir
they
les clochettes des chevilles de
they
Radhika.
echo the ankle
Il y a
bells
toute
of
une
Radhika.
description comme ça.
There's a whole description like that. And then Krishna becomes completely
Ensorcelé
bewitched
par la beauté de
by
cette forêt.
the beauty of this forest.
Il est tellement
And he is
ensorcelé
so much
qu'il
bewitched
désire
that he desires
glorifier. Et c'est là
to glorify, and this is when he glorifies
en réalité,
Balaram.
il se glorifie
In reality, he glorifies himself
l'extase qu'il ressent.
from the ecstasy that he
Il veut décrire son sentiment.
that he feels. He wants to describe his feeling,
D'une manière
but
cachée,
in a hidden
il
way,
va glorifier.
he will glorify his brother to hide his feelings.
Parce qu'à Brahma,
Because in Braj,
tous
all
n'ont pas accès
do not have
au
access
sentiment
to
madhurya.
the Madhurya feelings of Krishna.
C'est pourquoi ces
That is
sentiments
why
sont
these
secrets.
feelings are secret,
Et
and
Krishna peut pas
Krishna
révéler.
cannot reveal them to everyone.
C'est pourquoi, en fait,
That is why, actually,
dans des jeux de mots,
in words
des
of
phrases qui ont un double sens,
games of words and
alors il va
phrases that have
glorifier
double meaning, he will glorify his own feelings, his own ecstasy,
à travers les
through
de son frère.
the glories of his brother.
Qui peut comprendre?
Who can understand this?
C'est pourquoi Brahma,
That is why Brahma,
il dit dans
he
un
says in this verse,
tu es accessible,
you are accessible only by your pure devotees. It is so beautiful,
mais en même temps,
but at the same time, he becomes fascinated.
tes pieds,
Your feet,
tes pieds,
your little feet,
tes pieds d'enfant.
your feet of the feet of a child,
Il voit les pieds
because he
de
sees
Narayan.
the feet of Lord Narayan.
Mais
But
lorsqu'il décrit les
when
pieds
he describes the feet of the child,
de Krishna,
which is Krishna,
il dit que ces pieds
he says that these feet,
sont encore plus.
they are even sweeter.
Et lorsque tu marches
And when you walk
dans cette terre de Brahma,
in this land of Braj,
tu laisses des empreintes
you
qui sont tellement
leave
merveilleuses.
footprints that are so wonderful.
Brahma,
Well, actually, Brahma,
dans ce sentiment,
in this feeling,
il devient
he
de plus
becomes
en plus
more and more attracted by the sweetness of Krishna.
Et en fait, son
And
sentiment
actually his
pour
feeling
le Seigneur Narayana,
for Lord Narayan,
il recule.
it
Il découvre un sentiment nouveau.
takes a distance and
Et c'est
discovers a new
extraordinaire.
feeling. It is extremely wonderful for the
En
bhaktas.
fait, qu'est-ce que c'est un
Actually,
dévot
what
du
is a
Seigneur?
devotee of the Lord?
C'est quelqu'un qui
It is
s'absorbe
someone who absorbs
constamment dans
himself
la gloire du
constantly in the glories of the Lord.
Seigneur. Il aime vivre
He
avec
loves
les
to
dévots.
live with the devotees.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, il a dit,
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu
le
said,
symptôme d'un
the
Vaishnava,
symptom of a
c'est qu'il
Vaishnava
délaisse
is that
l'association des
he
matérialistes
leaves the association of materialists,
à satsanga.
a satsanga.
Parce qu'en fait,
Because actually,
les matérialistes,
the materialists,
c'est considéré dans
it is considered in the
comme des
Bhagavatam,
corbeaux
they are like
qui vont dans les décharges
crows that go into
manger des déchets,
garbages to eat the garbage, and they croak because they don't want to hear the glories of the Lord. So it is described that this association dries up the plant of devotion, bhakti.
C'est pourquoi
That is why
un dévot
a devotee, he always wants to be in this association of the devotees to hear the glories of the Lord, because at one point it generates the purity, taste, attachment, and love.
c'est le seul
This is the only process.
Et
And
Vishwanath,
Vishwanath says,
ces dévots-là,
these devotees, they don't even want to live in holy places. They don't want to even to visit holy places. They just want to be in the company of the Vaishnavas,
parce que c'est là où
because it is where the Lord is present.
il dit, ils veulent
He says
même
they
pas
don't even want
visiter les lieux.
to visit the holy places. Can you believe it?
La puissance
The power of the Vaishnavas. Because where the Vaishnavas are present,
Radha
Radha and Krishna, the word of Krishna, all the tirthas come.
Pourquoi? Parce que quand le Vaishnava
Why? Because when the Vaishnava
parle,
speaks,
Krishna vient.
Krishna comes to, he listens, he becomes attracted, he manifests in his heart
Avec tous ses amis,
with all of his friends,
et il est-
and he listens.
et le bhakta,
And he,
il
Bhakta,
voit ça.
he sees this.
Il assiste directement.
He assists directly to the scene.
C'est pas une invention.
It's not an
Il
invention.
peut en fait,
He can,
dans son état
in
originel,
his original
voir
state,
comment
see how
presque c'est comme si
it
tout
is
s'arrêtait à
like
marcher.
everything stopped and brushed to listen. Everybody stops.
C'est pourquoi les êtres
That is why
comme Prabhupada,
beings like Prabhupada,
ils ont un tel
they have
pouvoir.
such power.
Parce que
Because
quand ils parlent,
when they speak,
Krishna s'arrête
Krishna stops
et il boit en fait
and he drinks
le nectar de
the
son
nectar of his own glories.
C'est quelque chose d'inconnu.
It is something inconceivable.
Mais comment on peut comprendre ça?
But how can we understand this?
Par l'humilité.
By humility.
S'il n'y a pas d'humilité,
If there's no
on ne
humility,
peut rien comprendre.
you can understand nothing. You're like an animal.
Il n'y a pas de sentiment,
There's no feelings,
il n'y a pas de vision.
there are no vision,
Et on peut pas faire
and
la
we
différence
cannot make the difference
entre une bonne
in between a good
association
association and a bad association.
En fait, dans le monde matériel,
Actually, in the material
on est
world,
obligé de rencontrer
we're
toutes
obliged
sortes de
to
personnes.
meet different kinds of people.
Mais
But
lorsqu'on parle
when we
d'association,
speak
on
about
parle
association,
d'échanger un
we speak
sentiment.
about exchanging a feeling.
Oh,
Oh,
tu es mon frère,
you are my
tu es
brother,
mon ami,
you are my
tu
friend,
fais partie de
you are
la
part of the family,
tu es cher pour moi,
you're dear for me,
Et à
etc.
ce moment-là, il y a
And then
l'association.
there is association.
Mais si on fait la même
But if we
chose
do
pour
the
un
same
service
thing
pour Krishna,
for a service for
il n'y a
Krishna,
pas d'association.
then there's no association.
C'est un service.
It is a service.
C'est pourquoi
That is why
on doit toujours
we
être
must
disposé
always be
dans un
disposed
sentiment de service.
in a feeling of service.
Parce que de cette
Because in
manière-là,
this way,
on voit Krishna partout.
we see Krishna everywhere and we are protected.
Qu'est-ce que c'est
What is
un asura?
an asura?
C'est quelqu'un
It is someone
qui ne veut pas être,
that doesn't want to be with Krishna,
qui ne veut pas servir.
that doesn't want to serve Krishna.
Mais un bhakta,
But a
il ne
bhakta,
peut pas faire autrement.
he cannot do different other way than
C'est
serving.
pourquoi,
That
peu
is why,
importe la situation
no matter the
où
situation where he is,
il est simplement
he is
protégé
simply
s'il
protected
est dans ce sentiment
if
de
he is
service.
in this feeling of service.
Sans ça, il y a contamination.
Otherwise, there is contamination.
Et vous prenez les défauts
And you take the
matériels,
material
les
faults and the
qualités
material
des
qualities
êtres
of the living entities.
Et le résultat,
And the
vous
result,
n'avez pas de
if you don't have, is that you don't have taste for spiritual life after.
Et graduellement,
And gradually,
vous perdez
you lose
le désir
the desire
de l'association.
of a good association.
Parce qu'en fait,
Because actually,
dans la bonne association,
in the good association,
on apprend
we learn
à aimer Krishna.
to love Krishna.
On apprend
We learn
à comprendre
to understand
les sentiments des dévots.
the feelings of the devotees.
Et on accepte
And we
ces
accept
sentiments
these feelings
comme notre vie et notre
as our life and soul.
quelque chose qui est très
It is
important.
something that is very important.
Et Brahma,
And Brahma,
il dit, en fait,
he says actually,
donc ça c'est Vishwanath
so this is Vishwanath
qui cite Brahma.
who quotes Brahma.
Je ne peux estimer
I
la
cannot
grandeur
estimate the
de ton
greatness
corps transcendantal.
of your transcendental body.
Se livrant à des jeux enfantins,
Doing childish
que
games.
dire de tes divertissements
What
d'enfance?
to speak of your childhood pastimes.
Si je ne peux pas
If
comprendre
I
la
cannot
puissance de ton
understand
corps
the
transcendantal,
power of your transcendental
alors
body,
comment pourrais-je
then
comprendre
how will I
le
be able
bonheur
to
que tu
understand the
éprouves
happiness
pour
that you
toi-même
express,
en
you
gardant
feel
tes
in yourself by
Et
keeping
c'est
the
très
calves?
intéressant
And it is very interesting
parce qu'on voit
because
que
we
Brahma, il
see
se dirige
that Brahma
vers un
directs himself
sentiment
in a
de
feeling
vouloir
of wanting
réaliser
to realize
ce goût
this
que Krishna,
taste
il est
that Krishna
avec
is
les veaux.
with the calves.
Ça, c'est le sentiment.
This is the feeling of a saka.
C'est très intéressant.
It's very interesting.
Je ne peux pas comprendre
I
le
cannot
bonheur que
understand
tu
the
ressens,
happiness that you feel,
que ressentent, pardon,
that
tes amis passent,
your cowherd friends feel.
sans parler du bonheur que
What
tu
to
éprouves
speak
en
of
jouant
the
directement
happiness
avec
that you feel by playing directly with them.
C'est intéressant.
It's interesting
Parce qu'en fait, il y a cette
because there is this attraction.
il désire comprendre.
He desires to understand.
Il désire être situé dans cette situation.
He desires to be situated in this situation.
Parce qu'il est Brahma,
Because he's Brahma,
parle avec une certaine
he speaks with
éloquence,
a certain eloquence,
mais son désir.
but his desire is there.
Pourquoi
That is why Prabhupada
que
explains
Brahma
that
est
Brahma
situé dans ce
is situated in this feeling.
Parce qu'en fait, dans
Because
cette prière,
actually in these
que
prayers
Srila Vishwanath
that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti
va
Thakur
citer,
will quote,
on ressent
we feel
que Brahma il
that
veut
Brahma,
comprendre.
he wants to
Il veut être
understand,
introduit.
he wants to be introduced,
Directement,
and directly
demande à Krishna
he's asking for Krishna
de pouvoir comprendre.
to be able to understand.
Mais qu'est-ce que ça veut dire?
But what does that
Si je n'ai
mean?
pas une forme
If I don't have a
transcendantale,
transcendental
si je n'ai pas
form,
la forme
if
d'un
I don't have
saka,
the form of a
je ne peux
saka,
pas comprendre ce qu'un saka
you
il
cannot
peut
understand what a saka
en
can
gardant
feel
les vaches avec
by
toi.
keeping the
Ce
calves
que
with
c'est de
him.
prendre ta
What it
main
is to take your hand
et marcher avec
and
toi.
walk with you.
En fait, la marche, c'est une danse.
See, the walk is a dance.
De lever les bras,
To raise your arms, to look at you, to see you smile,
d'être simplement
to be simply
captivé par toi.
captivated by
Je
you.
peux pas comprendre.
I cannot understand it,
Mais pourquoi il dit
but why he says that?
Parce qu'il y a le
It's
désir.
because there's the desire.
Donc,
So,
la bonne association
the good association
réveille le désir.
awakens the desire.
La mauvaise association
Bad association
fait l'effet inverse.
does the opposite effect.
Avec un matérialiste,
With a materialist, we develop material desires.
avec un pur dévot,
With a pure devotee,
on développe
we develop
spirituel.
spiritual desires.
C'est ça la différence.
This is the difference.
C'est pourquoi
That is why Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the Jaiva Dharma, he takes essential care in describing the principle of the association Sangha and a satsanga, the bad association,
Parce que
because
c'est le moteur
it is the engine
pour une âme conditionnée
for a conditioned soul
de progresser.
to progress.
Et on doit faire extrêmement attention.
And we must be extremely careful,
Parce que lorsqu'on s'associe
because
avec un
when we associate with materialists,
on ne peut plus chanter.
the next day we cannot chant.
Leurs paroles reviennent.
Their words are coming back,
Leurs sentiments
their
reviennent.
feelings are coming back,
Et on ne peut pas chanter.
and we cannot chant.
Le goût disparaît graduellement.
The taste disappears gradually
Parce qu'on reçoit des
because we
impressions.
receive material impressions,
Et c'est vrai.
and it is true.
Mais
But
si on sert Krishna
if we serve
dans
Krishna
toutes les situations,
in all situations,
alors
then
viendra protéger
Krishna will
son
come to protect his devotee,
Parce que il viendra
because he will come
manifester dans
to
son
manifest in his heart,
cœur. Et alors il pourra
and then he will be able to see
former Krishna.
the beautiful form of Krishna.
À partir de là,
From there, a devotee
complètement
is completely
protégé.
protected.
Parce que si Krishna
Because
le
if
protège,
Krishna does not protect him,
le chant ne peut plus être pur.
the chanting cannot be pure anymore.
La méditation
The
s'arrête.
meditation stops,
Et on redevient un
and we
matériel.
become a material devotee again.
C'est une loi.
It is a law.
C'est les acharyas qui expliquent.
The Acharyas explain this.
Donc on doit vraiment
So we must really
comprendre comment
understand how to associate.
Et Bhaktivinoda Thakur, il va
And Bhaktivinoda Thakur even goes deeper.
On devrait juste donner son cœur à des purs dévots.
We should only give our heart to pure devotees.
Ça veut dire qu'on devrait même pas
That means we should not even have direct association between ourselves,
une association à travers le
but an association through service.
Parce qu'on voit,
Because we see
quand les Kanishta,
when the Kanishta Bhaktas associate,
comme ils sont barbés
since they are full of envy,
très querelle,
after they quarrel,
plein de querelle.
there are many quarrels.
Et pourquoi la querelle?
And why the quarrel
C'est parce
comes?
qu'ils veulent
It is because they
quelque chose
want
des uns et des autres.
something from one and the others.
Mais en fait,
But actually,
lorsqu'on accepte
when we accept this principle of association and we become a Madhyam Bhakta,
alors,
then
graduellement,
gradually,
pourquoi on perd
why we lose
cette conception
this conception
de
of
colère?
quarrel, of anger?
C'est parce qu'on-
It is
on
because
s'associe
we
simplement
associate
au
simply
service du Seigneur.
through the service of the Lord.
Pourquoi la passion
That is why
et
passion
l'ignorance?
and ignorance, they fall asleep.
Chez la Vishnu Thakur explique ça.
Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains that at the Nishta level,
L'ignorance,
at the level of Madhyam, ignorance and passion, they are resting.
c'est pourquoi qu'on peut
That
être
is why
cet esprit
we can always be in the spirit of service
dépourvu d'envie.
and be devoid of envy.
C'est pas possible.
Otherwise, it is not possible.
Donc,
So,
on va s'arrêter là.
we will stop here.
On doit
We must
vraiment
really
comprendre
understand
comment être dans un
how
service.
to be in a constant state of service.
Et ça, c'est quelque
And
chose
this is something
qu'on apprend dans notre
that we learn in our life
par l'écoute,
through the hearing
gloire du Seigneur,
of the glories of the Lord
et aussi
and
la mise en
also
pratique.
to the putting in
Parce
practice.
que lorsqu'on écoute
Because when we listen,
et qu'on expérimente,
when we experience,
alors on
then
peut accepter
we
que
can
notre philosophie
accept
est réelle,
that our philosophy is real
parce qu'elle devient pratique.
because it becomes
Et à
practical.
ce moment-là,
And at that moment,
l'intelligence
the intelligence
qu'on reçoit du Seigneur,
that we receive from the Lord,
elle se met en place
it is put into
le
place
fait
in the
qu'on met
fact
en action.
that we put in action this knowledge.
Et à ce moment-là,
And at that point,
on est toujours protégé.
we are always protected.
Toujours protégé.
Always protected.
Parce que quand on apprécie
Because when we
les
appreciate
on voit
materialists,
automatiquement des fautes chez les dévots.
we see automatically faults in devotees. This is how it's happening. This is what our acharyas are explaining. It is a law.
Donc, on doit faire vraiment
So we
attention.
must be very careful.
Parce que si on
Because
accepte
if we accept
cette loi du service,
this law of
on
service,
voit la vérité.
then we see the truth in living in others too.
Parce que lorsqu'on sert
When
le
we
Seigneur,
serve the Supreme Lord,
notre réalité,
our
s'éveille
reality
et
awakens
on perçoit
and we perceive
une réalité
a reality
même que les êtres
even
ne peuvent pas percevoir.
that the living entities cannot perceive within
C'est pour
themselves.
ça qu'on est protégé.
That is why we are
Et
protected.
aussi, notre comportement
And also our behavior
va être porteur
will be
aussi, sans qu'ils le savent, d'un éveil
a bearer also without their knowing of a spiritual awakening. It's very powerful.
On prend l'exemple
We take the example
d'une mère
of a mother
qui sert son enfant
that
pour
serves
Krishna.
her child to please
Elle
Krishna.
nourrit directement l'enfant.
She nourishes directly the child with love of
Et
God.
lorsque l'enfant
And when the child grows up,
il grandit,
he grows up nourished by this love.
rien que ça,
Only this
ça permet
allows
que l'enfant
for the child
devienne un dévot
to become a devotee.
et qu'il cherche Krishna.
And he searches Krishna everywhere.
C'est puissant.
It's very powerful.
C'est pourquoi
That is why
on doit vraiment
we must really
comprendre
understand
qu'il y a des lois
that we're in law, that there are laws,
et qu'on doit les appliquer.
and we must apply them for our
C'est
good
le bien des autres.
and the good of
C'est
others.
très important.
It is very important.
C'est pourquoi le
That
Seigneur,
is why the
en tant
Lord,
que notre ami,
as our friend,
pourquoi il nous donne tous ces
why
conseils à
He
travers ses
gives us all these advices through His
C'est pour
devotees.
nous permettre
It is to
d'agir
allow us
parfaitement
to act perfectly
et de revenir à lui.
and go back to Him.
Et on voit,
And we see
quand on médite sur des
when
personnages
we
Srila
meditate on
Prabhupada,
characters like Srila
de
Prabhupada
quelle manière
and in which way
ils s'associaient,
he associated,
on voit bien que c'est
we
une
see
réalité
that
apparente chez lui.
it is like a apparent reality in
Alors
him.
bien sûr, c'est un haut
So of
niveau,
course it
c'est
is
tellement
a
élevé,
high level, it is so elevated,
on doit
but
suivre dans les traces
we must
des
follow
acharyas.
in the footsteps of the
C'est ce que
acharyas.
Srila Rupa
This
Goswami
is what
nous
Srila
explique.
Rupa Goswami explained to
C'est
us,
important.
and it is important.
Donc on doit prier
So we must pray
Krishna de nous
Krishna
apprendre à être
to
un
teach us to be a
et
devotee,
qu'on
and
devienne l'ami de tous les
that
êtres.
we become the friend of all living entities.
L'ami,
The friend, what is
c'est
it?
quelqu'un qui donne le meilleur.
It is someone who gives
Que ce soit d'une manière visible,
knowledge, whether it is in a visible or invisible way.
mais on est obligé de
But
donner
we are
quelque chose.
obliged to give
Parce qu'il n'y a que Krishna qui peut sauver
because
tous
only
les êtres.
Krishna can give life to all living entities. It is very important.
Merci.
Thank you very much.